Hi, I'm Walt, and this is Delta Astrophotography. The key to getting really detailed, bright exposures of these almost invisible objects in outer space is simply collect more light. Now, we typically go about doing this by using tracking mounts, like this tracking mount here, or that move, shoot, move right there. And that gives us long exposures because they move along with the stars. And we also use a stacking method where we take the same picture over and over and over again and stack them in stacking software, and that helps bring out more detail and less noise. And now it's wintertime, the time of very long nights and warm days and 2 months worth of rain. Anyway, with all these long nights, you would think it would be great to go outside just after sunset and shoot something in the east all night where you could get 6 to 8 hours of data on it. But sadly, this is not a perfect world, and a lot of us, maybe even most of us, will have problems with our target running into a tree or a building or a house or a phone pole or a farm or the moon or clouds or something. Something is going to stop us from being able to image all night. Now, a lot of beginners, including myself when I first started out, they'll go out and shoot 30 minutes to maybe 3 or 4 hours and call it a night, done, move on to the next project. But in reality, you really want to get 10, 15, 20 hours on a target if you really want to see some incredible detail. Not all targets are like this, but some of the dimmer ones really are. So instead of just shooting a one-night session, most astrophotographers these days do multi-night projects where they shoot the same target for many nights, maybe days in a row, weeks in a row, months, even years in a row. And that's what we're gonna do in this video. So join us in today's episode of There are two important parts to make a multi-night astrophotography project. The first one is reframing your target the exact same way each night, and the second is stacking each night into a final image, and we're gonna go over both. This is probably self-explanatory, but I'm gonna go ahead and mention it anyway. When you're doing a multi-night project, you need to be using the same telescope and the same camera each night. You don't want to switch things up. Now, I didn't get into multi-night imaging until I got a go-to mount, this EQ6R Pro, and that really opened up some big doors to allow me to slew to and reframe my target each night. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to do multi-night projects with just a camera and a tripod or a camera on this move, shoot, move star tracker or any small star tracker, but it's just a lot more difficult. It's going to take a lot more time and work to frame your target up the exact same way each night. So let me give you a few quick tips if you do decide to do that. 1, shoot wide. Do not try to shoot a target that fills the whole frame because your framing is not going to be the same each night, and you're going to have stacking artifacts and you're going to have to crop the crap out of your photo. So make sure you shoot pretty wide and leave room for cropping. Second, if at all possible, try to avoid zoom lenses. If this shifts even ever so slightly between nights, that's it. Your multi-night project is ruined. Third, try to avoid using ball heads if you can. There's just a little too much freedom with a ball head, and the chances of you getting the framing just right night after night with something with this much freedom, it's very low. So I would much rather use a pan and tilt tripod than a ball head. And finally, try choosing an object with a bright star that you can center up. That will make things so... Sound horse? You're fired, buddy. What was I saying? Oh yeah, try to find something with a bright star that you can center up. That really makes things much simpler. Something like the Orion Nebula core is very bright, or the Horsehead All-in-Attack. That star is super bright, super easy to frame up. These really small and dim targets that you cannot see with the naked eye, these are going to be insanely hard to frame up manually from night to night. But with a go-to mount, it just does all the work for you. So if you're using your hand controller or mount control software to slew to your target, let's say you're just typing in Orion Nebula, slewing to it, not changing anything about the framing and just imaging from there, great. You can just keep doing that every single night and that'll be just fine. But a lot of us like to custom frame our target. And so if you want to recreate that exact framing every night, I'll show you how to do that in both the ASIAIR and Nina. The ASIAIR being this tiny little computer here that I use to control all my gear, or Nina, which is free software that I run on my laptop that I can also use to control all this stuff. Good Lord, this horse was messier than I am. Oh, didn't realize he had a family. Wonder what the old guy's up to. Before we go outside and shoot anything, I want to show you the system that I use to frame up targets that I shot a long time ago with custom framing. On the ASIAIR, I store all my photos and files on this little thumb drive right here. When I shoot with Nina and the laptop, I store all my files on this little SD card. Now on both of these, I have a folder called Go-To References. Basically, every time I have a project, I'll save one of the light frames and put it into the Go-To References folder. That way I can use it to plate solve and go back to that exact same framing anytime I want. Let me show you what that folder looks like. All right, this is the contents of the thumb drive that I use for my ASIAIR. As I said, I've got a folder called Go-To References. And here's just a bunch of light frames that I've taken over the past year or so. While I'm in the ASIAIR, I can pull up any one of those and immediately slew my telescope right to it. So that's just very convenient to have on your ASIAIR or laptop at all times. All right, now it's time to go outside and set up and get ready to collect some data. I think I'm going to collect some data on an old horse head project. Horse.
3 hours later.
With both the ASIAIR and Nina, I've already gotten to the point where I've polar aligned my mount, focused my telescope. Now I need to frame up my target. We're going to start with the ASIAIR. I've got my thumb drive in that has a lot of old light frames to use as go-to references. So let's jump into the ASIAIR and see how that works. Okay, basically all I need to do is go to the top to the little flash drive icon, tap that, go to Image Management. I've got my Go-To References folder right here. I'm going to tap that. I'm going to look for the Horsehead Nebula that I took about a year ago. There it is right there, horse.fit. And I'm just going to hit Go-To. The ASIAIR has looked at my old horsehead, figured out where it was in space, and it knows exactly where to point the scope, so I'm going to hit Go-To right now. Now, after you've plate solved an old light frame and slewed to it, that might be it. You can just go ahead and start imaging from there. But most telescopes have a rotator, and you can actually rotate your camera like this. And you might do that to get better framing, or just to get the image to fit in your frame. Or sometimes your camera just rotates a little bit over time, and you don't even notice it. Either way, if your rotation's off, you're gonna have to correct that. I want to mention real quick that there are electronic rotators that will communicate with your software and rotate your camera for you and get the framing just right without you having to touch anything. Up until now, they've been kind of expensive and they didn't work with the ASIAIR, so I never bothered getting one. ZWO just announced their rotator for pre-order, so that's a thing now. Not sure if I'm going to get one, but just know that that technology is out there. Now, if my rotation is off, I'm going to get a notification like this, and it's basically going to ask me to go adjust the rotation so it'll match my old light frame. So I'm going to click Go to Adjust. And here we can clearly see how bad my rotation is off. The red is my old photo, and the blue is my current rotation. So I'm just going to click Auto, and it's going to keep taking photos, and while I adjust the rotation, it'll show me in real time if my rotation is getting better. So I'll give it a good rotate. And there we go. That's almost perfect. That's almost the exact same framing that I had a year ago. Now let's do the same thing on Nina on my laptop. Just like the ASIAIR, I have an SD card on the laptop that has some old light frames of the horsehead. So that's what we're working with. In Nina, we're going to go to the Framing tab right here. And for Image Source, we're going to select File. Load Image right here. I'm going to choose my horsehead light frame from about a year ago. I'm going to open that up. And since my old light frame is a fit file, it's got all the information right here already saved from over a year ago. I don't have to type anything in, so we're just gonna go ahead and hit plate solver. All right, it's plate solved that old photo, and we're gonna go ahead and hit slew and center. All right, now that I've got the horse head all centered up, I'm gonna check for rotation. The rotation in my old light frame is 92.15. Now we're gonna check the rotation of my current setup. So I'm gonna click Determine Rotation from Camera. It's gonna take a photo, plate solve, and determine my current rotation. And as we can see, my current rotation is 68.31, not quite the same as the 92.15, so I'm gonna rotate my camera and keep clicking Determine Rotation from Camera until I get to that 92.15 that the old photo was at. 92.87. I think that's close enough to where it's not gonna cause any problems. From here, once you've got everything framed up, you can go ahead and start your imaging session. Now that we've collected data over multiple nights, we're gonna wanna stack them into one image so we can process it. And I'm gonna show you how I do it in 3 different stacking softwares. We're gonna do it in Deep Sky Stacker, Siril, and PixInsight. Now the way I do it might not be the same way other people do it. I'm just gonna show you how I do it, and maybe you can get something out of it. So let's go ahead and jump into the computer and get to stacking. All right, we're gonna start with Deep Sky Stacker. This is free stacking software for Windows. First thing I'm gonna do is come up here to the top left and click Open Picture Files. And we're gonna load in our light frames from night 1. As you can see, I got a folder here, and inside that folder is night 1, 2, and 3 of this project. So we're gonna go ahead and open up night 1, go to my light frames, and add those in. If you took your calibration frames, let's add those next. Let's add my dark files. You might notice in my dark folder, I have 5-second dark frames and 120-second dark frames. The 120 seconds are my actual dark frames, and the 5 seconds are my dark flats. For my camera, I take dark flats instead of biases. Right now, we're just adding regular dark, so I'm gonna select all my 120-second dark frames. Now I'm gonna add in my flat files from night 1. And if you took biases, go ahead and add those. But like I said, I took dark flats instead, so I'm gonna add in my dark flat files. All right, I've got night 1 all loaded up. Now, if we come down here to where it says main group, right next to it, it's created a new group automatically called group 1. And that's where we're gonna add in all of our night 2 files. So click that. Let's go back up to the top and do that all over again with night 2. And after I've loaded all my night 2 files, it's automatically created another group down here, group 2. I'm gonna go ahead and click that and add in night 3. All right, night 3 is all loaded. It's created another new group, but we're not gonna need it because 3 nights are all I had. So we're gonna go up here to click Check All, then Register Checked Pictures. From here, you can click on Recommended Settings if you want. Looks like everything important is in green, so that's good. If you see anything red, you might wanna try that out. I'm just gonna leave everything in here as is, hit OK again. Scroll down to the bottom and it says I'm stacking a total time of 9 hours and 12 minutes. And we'll just hit OK. It's gonna stack all 3 nights into one file. I can save that file when it's done to wherever I want and process it however I want. Now we're gonna do the same thing in Siril, but instead of stacking directly in Siril, I like to use an extension called Sirilic. And that's this right here. I'll leave a link to this in the description below, but Siril is free for both Mac and Windows, but on Mac you have to have Python to install this because this is a Python script. I do not have a Mac, I cannot show you how that works, but just so you know, you have to have Python to use this on a Mac. Okay, to get started, I'm gonna go up here to File, New. I'm gonna give this session a name, I'm gonna call it Horse. number of sessions, we had 3 nights, so let's go ahead and change that to 3. This is not mono data, so I'm going to uncheck that. It's color data, so let's check color, one-shot color here, and hit OK. Now let's go back to File, Preferences, and we're just going to select our work directory where Ciril's going to save all our files. I'm just going to make it the same folder that my night 1, 2, and 3 folders are in, and hit OK. Now up here at the top left, we can see all 3 sessions, all 3 nights, so I'm just going to click the top one, go to Files right here, and let's add in our files. Images, that's your light frame, so let's add those from night 1. If you took biases, you can add those, but like I said, I took dark flats instead, so I'm not going to worry about biases. I'm going to add my darks. Flats. And my dark flats. All right, night 1 is loaded in. Now we'll click on the second session and load in night 2. Night 2 is done, and all we have to do is click on the third session, and we're going to add in night 3 and be done. Okay, we've got all 3 nights loaded up. If you want to go into any kind of advanced settings, all you have to do is click Properties, and you have advanced settings for your lights, your biases, your darks, flats, dark flats, and you can look at the settings for each night as well. You can go to more properties, see more advanced stuff. You don't really have to mess with too much in here, except for one thing. I think I saw this in the comments section of one of Nico Carver's videos. But while you're in properties, if you go over to the flat tab, if you use biases, you need to check biases subtract. Why on earth that is not checked by default, I have no idea. But yeah, if you used biases at all, go to Properties, Flat, and check Subtract Biases. Anyway, after we played around with our advanced settings, it's time to stack. Oh yeah, let me go back up to Flat. I did not take biases, so I'm going to uncheck this box. So yeah, let's stack this stuff. Let's go to Actions up here at the top. Step 1, build directories, copy lengthy images. Now that that's done, let's go back up to Actions. Step 2, build and run the Siril script. Let's click that. And it will now stack everything and open it up in Siril, and I will see when it's done. And it is done, and the image has automatically opened up in Siril. Let's go ahead and look at it. I'm doing an auto stretch real quick down here. And as we can see, the image is upside down, but we can fix that easily just by going to Image Processing, Geometry. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees and do the same thing again. Image Processing, Geometry, rotate it 90 degrees one more time. There we go, that's the proper orientation, or at least the one I like. And if you don't want to see all that green, while it's in auto stretch mode down here, we can just click the chain link. There we go, we got a 3-night horsehead image ready for processing. And finally, we're going to do this again in PixInsight. Now the last 2 methods were fairly similar, but the way I do things in PixInsight is going to be a good bit different. So we're going to start by looking at how I have my folders and files organized. I have a folder called Horse, and inside it's got Night 1, Night 2, Night 3, in their own folders. And inside each folder, I've got lights, flats, and darks. And if you have biases, you would have a folder called Biases as well. But like I said, I didn't take biases, I took dark flats. And so my darks and dark flats are both in the exact same folder labeled darks. And PixInsight has no problem distinguishing between the two. Each night is organized just like this. All right, now that we've talked about that, let's go back into PixInsight. And we're going to go to Script, Batch Processing, Weighted Batch Preprocessing. All right, here we are in Weighted Batch Preprocessing. If you have anything already in here, let's clear that out by hitting Reset, clear all files from list. And before we get started loading in any files, we want to teach PixInsight to group these by individual nights. We want them to group Night 1, Night 2, and Night 3 together, so it'll know which calibration files go to which night. The easiest way to do that is come over here on the right, grouping keywords, and we're just going to use the word night. Click the plus button. And now when we load in our files, it should know the difference between my darks from Night 1 and 2 and 3, or my flats from Night 1, 2, and 3. And instead of adding in our lights individually and then our flats and then our darks, like we did in the other programs, we're just gonna click Directory here. We're gonna point it at that horse folder that has night 1, 2, and 3 in it, and just go ahead and select that folder. And because we've got that night keyword over here, it's gonna find all of our files from all the nights and automatically sort them, organize them, separate them. It's amazing. And there we go. It was that fast. So if we look here, we've got our light frames from night 1. If I click that, we can see it's already linked them with dark frames from night 1 and flat frames from night 1. Same with night 2. It automatically linked them with my calibration frames from night 2. Click on my light frames from night 3. We can see it's already linked my flat frames from night 3 and my darks. If I click on my flat frames, we can see it's automatically linked them to the dark flats from night 1, and the same with night 2 and night 3. It's great how it organizes all that for me just by uploading a directory. For me, this is the easiest way to do this. Now, before we do any stacking, I'm going to go over here and tell PixInsight where my work directory folder is going to be. I'm going to put it in the same folder as my night 1, 2, and 3. I'm just going to create a new folder and call it PI for PixInsight. Tell it to save all the work files in there, and we're about ready to go. I'm going to come up to post calibration. I like to turn on drizzle when I stack my files. You don't have to do that, not important, but I'm going to do it. And up here we can see we've got 9 hours and 12 minutes. Last thing I'm going to do before I hit run is just check the word night, like make sure it's highlighted. That way it'll properly stack everything into one final photo at the very end. And we're just going to hit run. Well, all right, everybody, that about sums it up how you take a multi-night photo. How many nights do you really need? Well, that's really up to you and the image you're shooting. Some images are pretty bright. The horse head really only needs a night or two to get all kinds of great detail. But the project I'm working on now, I think I made a mistake. So throughout the month of December and early January, I decided to take a break from Orion and things in Orion and try something a little different. And so I'm doing the Spaghetti Nebula. Now, I've never really done this one before because it's huge and all my telescopes are too zoomed in for it, even my smallest one. But this year I decided to do a 2-panel mosaic. Boy, was that a mistake. This is one of the dimmest targets I've ever tried to shoot, and it turns out you need like 30 to 40 hours on this thing to really get the detail popping. So far, I've gotten about 16 hours over 6 nights in the past month, and it's still not quite where I want it to be. And that's 16 hours per panel, so that means in the past month, I've spent about 32 hours on this thing. I think it's time for me to take a break from this, try something else. I think I'm gonna get out the Move, Shoot, Move in this Sony a7 III camera that I have right now and just play around with some camera settings. Camera settings. Camera settings. Sound Horse, I'm sorry, I'm gonna need you back, buddy.
Camera settings, yay!
Yeah. But anyway, until then, I'm gonna show you the Spaghetti Nebula that I have so far. Like I said, it's not finished, but instead of just showing you an image, I'm gonna show you what it looks like with 1 night or 2 hours of data, and I'm gonna slowly add more data till you see what it looks like with 16 hours over 6 nights. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments below and leave me a like. Special shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank y'all so much for the support. Love chatting with you. You guys are my family on Discord now. You guys want to chat with me and us on Discord? I got a link to my Patreon below. That'd be awesome to see you there. All right, everybody, I'm gonna get out of here. As always, stay spacey, clear skies, watch out for snakes, and we'll see you in the next one.